Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cone back here again today with another recap of the NBA games from earlier today. There were a ton of games today, some interesting things to talk about, so I figured I'd make another one of these videos. I believe this is my second night in a row making one now. I'm going to try and get more consistent making them. It won't be every night, but it will be at least every other night probably. Three teams I really want to focus on are the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Jazz. All three of those teams played today, and they had pretty good performances, each of them. And I believe that those three teams are really starting to separate themselves as the elite teams in the Western Conference. So I'm going to talk about those games the most at the end of the video. I'm going to start out talking a little bit about each of the other games because there were a lot of interesting games to talk about today. So go ahead, drop a like, drop a subscribe if you like this type of content. Leave me a comment, tell me something you observed or one of your takeaways from today's games, and I'll just go ahead and get started. KnicksWizards, Mitchell Robinson for the Knicks went out early with an injury. I believe he broke his wrist. He was having a really good game prior to that. Sucks to see him go down. He was a guy who I thought could really be a breakout candidate for this Knicks team, and he was having a really good game, dominating the Wizards in every way. It's really unfortunate they ended up getting injured. I hope it's not too long of an absence for him and for a Knicks team that's really trying to make that playoff push. This will open up rotational minutes for Obi Toppin, who I've hated to see really get relegated to the bench, and he's kind of been at the back end of Thibodeau's rotations. Thibodeau's not really known for playing his young guys very much, so I can't say I'm surprised, but it does suck for a guy who is already 22 years old, and he's starting his NBA career riding the bench a lot of the time. It does kind of make sense in terms of personnel because Julius Randle has played like an all-star this season. He was the other big positive from this game for the Knicks. I don't know if he's going to end up getting that spot because the East does have a lot of talent. I think he's just barely on the fringe of a guy who's really just not going to end up making it because guys are just better. But I do believe he does deserve that consideration, and I'm happy to see him showing out. For the Wizards side of the ball, this Wizards team sucks. They're just bad. Scott Brooks sucks as a coach. He doesn't know how to use his personnel. I had this Wizards team as a playoff team before the season. That's not happening unless Scott Brooks gets fired. It's just not. This team has a bunch of talent. It's just being very misused, and a lot of guys are struggling. A lot of guys having COVID injuries. There's a lot of stuff wrong with Washington right now. I don't know. Scott Brooks needs to go. Timberwolves Hornets, really the big takeaway from this game is the bright futures of both sides if their guys pan out. Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball, two of the top three picks in this year's draft, both really showed out. Anthony Edwards trying to silence those who have been saying that LaMelo should have been the first overall pick. Given I was one of the people who thought LaMelo should have been the first overall pick going into the draft, Anthony Edwards did have a really good game. Same with LaMelo, two guys that are really trying to make a name for themselves coming out of a draft that a lot of people call it a really weak draft class, trying to show that they are capable of a lot more than the media give them credit for. They both played great on the Timberwolves side of the ball. Cat and Malik Beasley played pretty well. It just wasn't enough to propel the Timberwolves over a Hornets team who was led by Terry Rozier tonight with over 40 points. He's been fantastic for them. I don't think he gets talked about enough when you're talking about pretty solid young players. I think he's only 25 or 26 years old, and he's averaging near 20 points per game. I think him and LaMelo are a pretty good fit in the backcourt. I see Devontae Graham long-term as more of a six-man type guy, with Terry Rozier as kind of a shooting guard playing the point guard. Same with LaMelo Ball being kind of a point guard playing the shooting guard position. I think they have a really good dynamic there, and I think that the Hornets have a really bright future. Spurs-Hawks. This one was over pretty early. The Spurs just dominated this game. DeMar DeRozan was incredible in the first half. I believe he had 21 of his 23 points in that first half. He just really wasn't even needed in the second half because the Spurs put this one away very early. The Spurs young core is really underrated. DeJounte Murray's great. Keldon Johnson's great. Devin Vassell has shown flashes. Lonnie Walker's pretty good. Derek White's pretty good. They just have a lot of really good young talent. And Jakob Poeltl, who we honestly haven't heard that much from either, he's been pretty good, or he was pretty good tonight. This Hawks team just didn't come out to play. John Collins, who is now starting to circulate a little bit in trade rumors, played really badly tonight. He only had 9 points. He's got to be better for this Hawks team to find the potential they want to hit. He's just kind of been inconsistent, and I'm not sure if the Hawks want to pay him that much money that he's probably going to ask for. So I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if they traded him. I would probably lean away from the fact that they would trade him. I think they like him with Trae Young. I think him and Trae Young get along well. I think that they're an interesting pairing, giving Trae Young a pretty good lob threat alongside Clint Capella for Trae to just throw lobs to all day. John Collins also plays outside the paint, which prevents it from getting clogged with him and Capella. John Collins is a good player. I'm just going to be interested to see where he ends up this season if the Hawks decide not to pay him and decide to deal him somewhere. Pelicans-Mavericks, this game was a shootout. Neither team played much defense, and the Mavericks just ended up taking this game by brute force. Kristaps was incredible tonight. If he could find consistency and play even just kind of like how he played tonight, this Mavericks team could be so much better than they have been. Luka set a new career high. He was amazing tonight. The Mavericks just really feasted on the Pelicans' terrible perimeter defense. This Pelicans team cannot play defense whatsoever. Not that the Mavericks really can either, but when you have the amount of three-point threats that the Mavericks have compared to the Pelicans, you're going to win this game. The Pelicans did have a lot of great performances. Ingram balled out. Zion was unstoppable. This Mavericks team desperately needs someone to play a rim protecting role because Zion was basically doing layup lines out there. I tweeted that out earlier. He shot 14 of 15 from this game. He had over 30 points. He just could not be stopped. I'm pretty sure Zion had told them every single time he came down the court, I am going to attack the basket. I'm going to score. There's nothing, like, he could have told them every time what he was going to do, and there was nothing they could have done because he was that dominant tonight. He's still really good. The media, honestly, has kind of given up on him a little bit, I think, and Zion's incredible still. I think that one of him or Ingram will be an all-star. I think Zion is probably who I would give it to right now. But this Pelicans team needs a lot of work. They have way too much talent that's just not being used well and talent that just doesn't fit well together. They're just not good. Pistons beat the Celtics again. I guess that means the Celtics are contenders because the Pistons just find ways to only beat the top teams in the conference. Both conferences, that is. And, man, this Pistons team, they might not be great, but they're super fun. Saddiq Bey was incredible tonight. He had 30 points. He shot 7 of 7 from 3. He didn't miss a single free throw on the night. Shot 83% from the field. Absolute dominant. My roommate is actually a Celtics fan, and he's like, why does Saddiq Bey look like Chris Middleton against the Celtics? And if you've watched Chris Middleton play the Celtics, you know what he's talking about. The Celtics side of the ball, this was just a bad loss. They were missing Kemba Walker tonight, but if you're going to be a championship-type team, you have to still be able to beat bad teams with one of your better players missing. We'll get to a couple examples of that coming up. This just wasn't good from the Celtics. Not good. They've got to be better. Thunder Nuggets, my favorite team, obviously the Thunder, missing SGA tonight. Still missing George Hill, missing Teo Maledon. I think the youth really showed in this game. We played phenomenally in the first half and then collapsed in the second half. The way it's really been when SGA is out, we just don't have a closer when he's gone. He usually takes over fourth quarters. We just couldn't get any offense going in that fourth quarter, and a lot of mistakes were made, bad turnovers. Hamidou Diallo with a really bad charge to foul out towards the end of the game. It was just a lot of mental mistakes from young guys. Justin Jackson played really well. He had 20 points for us, which is good for him. He's found his way into the rotation with limited guys. I'm just really proud of this team for fighting. I think we're 10-15 now, so the tank is very much on, but it's okay that we're losing games as long as we're fighting them and playing them very close, which is what this team did tonight, even without our best player. Nuggets side of the ball, they've got to be better than this. You can't only beat this team by 2. Jamal Murray struggled tonight. He was in the Dortress. Yeah, just not a great showing from the Nuggets. They've got to be better than this if they're trying to return to the Western Conference Finals. It just wasn't great. Cavs Blazers, this game was a blowout. Not much I want to talk about here. Andre Drummond is not very good anymore. He's just not. He kind of looked like an all-star to start the season, but he puts up a lot of empty stats. He tries to get way too involved in the offense, which he doesn't need to be. He should be playing more of a Rudy Gobert role in the offense. Instead, he's trying to ISO. He's trying to do post-ups. It's just not his game. He's a great rebounder. That's about it. I would not be surprised if some contending team just tries to make a run for him this offseason. It's not like you're committing to anything long-term financially because he is expiring this offseason. No team's going to pay him a ton of money. Actually, there are a couple teams I could think of that might pay him a lot of money. Hopefully they don't because I don't think he's worth that much money. Blazers just dominated this game. They played really well in the face of a lot of injuries, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. Magic Kings, not a lot to talk about here either. Bad loss for the Kings against a Magic team that is just depleted beyond all belief. Nikola Vucevic belongs in the All-Star conversation. He is a super underrated player, had over 40 points this game. I would love to see Nikola Vucevic on a couple different teams. I really think this Magic team should just blow it up this season. With the amount of injuries they've had, they don't even have to try to tank. They will just tank naturally. And if you can add a top 5 pick in this stacked draft class to Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, maybe even a Mo Bamba, if you can salvage something there, bring him back into the rotation, I think there's a lot there to start your rebuild, and it's a lot brighter future than this Magic team will have had in a very long time. So I think they should deal Vucevic. I think they should deal Aaron Gordon, should start fresh, and I'd love to see Vucevic on a couple of these contending teams. Like if Vucevic was moved to, say, like a Boston, that would be huge for them. I don't know, just a couple examples. I kind of might want to make a video about the Magic because I think they're in a very interesting situation. Maybe I'll do that. Let me know if you want that. Grizzlies, Lakers. I'm finally getting to those 3 teams that I really wanted to talk about. I'll start with this Grizzlies, Lakers game, I guess. This Lakers team just looked dominant tonight. It started off really poor for them, and I was like, oh God, Anthony Davis came back into the fold of things a few days off with an Achilles injury. Is this Lakers team really just going to flop over and play dead now? And the answer was no, because even though the Grizzlies started on a 20-2 run to start the game, this Lakers team, they really just showed their maturity. It was the same thing with the Thunder Nuggets game, where you had a young team go up really early on a really experienced team, a championship caliber team, and by the end of the game, the championship team showed why they are the contender. LeBron and AD both dominated this game. The Grizzlies are young. They have a lot of fun players, but they don't have that experience. They just have less talent than the Lakers do, and the Lakers just really made them pay for it. When Anthony Davis and LeBron James are on the court together, you can see why this team won the championship. It's a little less evident if just LeBron's out there, but if you have both of them out there, there is no doubt in my mind that this team is still a championship contender. They're a team that can repeat. Maybe they might try and make some more acquisitions. I really don't know if they need to. I think they really just need everyone to stay healthy. And Anthony Davis has long been kind of made of glass, but thankfully he stayed healthy during the playoff run last season. If he can just take a couple games off here and there throughout the regular season to make sure he's well rested going into the playoffs, then I think that this Lakers team is the favorite in the Western Conference to both win the championship and repeat as the champion of that Western Conference. Clippers Bulls, this game was more of a blowout. There was less to talk about here. The Clippers just dominated. The Bulls are like decent, but they're just no match for this Clippers team. The Clippers did this too. They won 125-106 without Paul George, which is what I was talking about with the Celtics, where you need to be able to beat teams that are worse than you if you're a contender, even without some of your best players. And they did it tonight. Paul George has been a borderline MVP candidate. He started the season as probably like a top 3-5 MVP candidate. He's probably fallen off a little bit now. I think Kawhi's definitely taken his spot in that conversation. But Paul George is still really, really good, a huge two-way threat. And the Clippers just made the Bulls look silly without him. Marcus Morris had a great game. Lou Will had a solid game for a player who's just not been good at all this season. It was good to see him kind of step back into the role that he's played. Like I mentioned, Kawhi Leonard, he's unstoppable. He's one of those guys where if he gets hot, you kind of just have to play your best defense and pray he misses. LaVine has stepped up on the defensive end, and I think LaVine should be an all-star just for what he's contributing offensively. He's averaging around 27 points per game. I think LaVine is going to be an all-star this season, but this Bulls team just doesn't have that defensive stopping power or the offensive firepower to keep up with the Clippers if they get hot. LaVine, like I said, LaVine's kind of stepped up on the defensive end. It's just not enough to stop Kawhi Leonard. This Bulls team has no one to stop Kawhi. And once again, the Clippers showed why they're the contender, and the Bulls are a team that's kind of fighting for that playoff spot. They have a really fun young core. They're just not quite there yet, I don't think. Or maybe they'll make the playoffs. It's kind of close there. I'm not sure if they will. Finally, we get to Bucks Jazz, which in my opinion was the biggest game of the night in terms of a statement win for the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are scary good. They made a team in the Bucks who was dominant last year in the regular season look like fool. They made them look like chumps. They made them look silly. The Jazz were just kind of playing around out there at sometimes. There was a possession where Bojan Bogdanovic threw a ball behind his back to Donovan Mitchell in the corner, who caught it and just baseball passed it across the court to the other corner for Joe Ingles, who caught the ball up here, like right at the top of his release, and just flicked his wrist, drilled it. It just wasn't even a problem. This Jazz team is so good. They remind me of like the Hawks team from 2015, and they just play very team-oriented basketball. They have a really good coach. That team's coach is Mike Budenholzer, has kind of fallen off in my eyes, as evident by this loss tonight to the Jazz. But back then with the Hawks, he was doing phenomenal things with that team. Quinn Snyder, I don't know why I said Schneider. Quinn Snyder is a fantastic coach. He has his team ready to play at all times. He has them playing as a team. They just remind me of that Hawks team in like the form of teamwork, but they do have a bit of a more star-powered offense in Donovan Mitchell, more star-powered defense in terms of Rudy Gobert. Those two guys are probably why this team is better than that Hawks team, I would say. They also have great shooters. They have Joe Ingles, who knocks down shots for Royce O'Neal. They just have all these great role players. They didn't even have Mike Conley tonight, who has played like kind of like an all-star this season. I don't think he will be. He doesn't have the stats, and I don't think that this Jazz team is as dominant as you have to be to have three all-stars. But Mike Conley's been fantastic. He didn't even play tonight. Now, give the Bucks credit. Drew Holiday did not play tonight. But this Jazz team, without one of their best players, a theme we keep seeing, dominated the Bucks without one of their best players. I would argue I would say probably their third best player. They just dominated this Bucks team. They just made them look kind of silly. Rudy Gobert was incredible tonight. I think people forget how good Rudy Gobert is. He's a legit defensive player of the year multiple times, and people just kind of treat him like he's overrated. I don't think he is. this Jazz team's just really good. I would not be surprised to see if they came out of the West. Additionally, the Clippers, the Lakers, those three teams have, like I said earlier in the video, have really, really started to separate themselves as the elite teams in the Western Conference. I think that whichever team of those three ends up as the 1 seed is going to be like a guaranteed lock to the finals. Not the finals, excuse me, Western Conference Finals. Because if you get that 1 seed, like if say this Jazz team sticks it out, because they're the 1 seed right now, if they end up getting the 1 seed, that makes the Lakers and Clippers play each other in the second round. The Lakers and Clippers, two of the best teams in the entire NBA, playing each other in the second round, that's huge for you. Because whoever comes out of that series had to go through hell to try and face you, and then you beat them up with Rudy Gobert, who's hard as hell to score on. You come at them with Donovan Mitchell, who can score. You've got flamethrowers all around the three-point line. If this Jazz team secures a spot or secures that 1st seed, I think they're a Western Conference Finals lock, and that would be huge to boost their chances of going to the finals. So this 1st seed in the West is going to be really, really important. Because if you're a Clippers, you do not want to, again, miss out on that 1 seed, and you have to face a Jazz in the second round or a Lakers in the second round, and potentially go home in the second round for the 2nd straight season where you're supposed to be a contender. If you're the Lakers, you do not want to face the Clippers or a Jazz in the second round. You want to wait till you face the Western Conference Finals for those teams. So I think that whichever one of those three teams ends up getting that 1st seed in the West has a huge advantage going into the playoffs, and that's why it's so interesting, because I think for this season, with how good those three teams have been, it is critical that you get the 1st seed in the West. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how much they rest guys. I think it's going to be interesting to see how much these teams come out and compete on a given night. I'm excited to see those three teams play each other. And I think that's about all I wanted to say. I'm just really excited about the Western Conference this season. It's really interesting. A lot of fun storylines, really good teams, and I think that's all I want to talk about. So if you made it to the end of this video, this is a long one, I'm sorry. But if you made it to the end, just drop an SGA is an all-star in the comments below, and I will see you guys later. Real one save.